This is a quick tutorial on responsive design. You can find the base file located in course documents. It's called base.html. You can download that and set this up, but it's pretty straightforward. It's stuff we've been talking about throughout the semester, where we have our basic tags, and then we're working in fixed dimensions, 400 by 800 pixels for the main mic and so forth. When we get into a fluid grid and responsive design, what we talked about was changing some of these dimensions from pixels to percentages, and that's going to allow certain tags to increase or decrease in size as you drag your browser left to right. So for instance, under main mic right now I've got 800 pixels wide by 400, but if I were to set that instead of 800 pixels to a percentage, and let's just say we want it to be 100%, I would select the PX and go to 100. If I were to save this and then preview this in the browser, you'll see that, let me drag this in here, you'll see that the header here now goes all the way across 100% of what the browser window is. So if I were to scroll this left and right, you'll see that that goes along with it. So that's turning your tags into fluid grids or a liquid layout. I could do the same thing with 100% for the navigation, and that would do the same. And then for the left and right, the left is 300 by 300, the side right is 500 by 300. If I were to split these two up, I'm going to have to set one to a certain percentage, which would be, let's say, 40%, and that would then, let me change it here, that would have to 40% there. Then the one on the right would have to be the difference of the two, so that would have to be 60%. So once that's set up like that, and we bring in, now I've got 40% here, a side left, and 60% here. So we're going to start working with percentages. There is a point where we can set the max width of these tags to be maybe like 800 pixels, and so if we don't want this to drag too far out, we could set a maximum width for those tags. So the widths we could leave at 100% for like the navigation and the header, and then for the asides we want to split the difference, or have one a certain percentage and the other another. So you can see that they're dragging and changing shape. If I wanted to set a maximum width on the header, for example, I could go to mic main and right here say a max width of, let's say, 800 pixels, and then it's not going to go beyond 800 pixels as far as max width. So that's a liquid layout. You'll build your site kind of like the base where you're working in pixels, and then you'll go in and start working with percentages, mainly with probably the heights as percentages. Then what happens is we need to have this respond to a mobile device like a iPhone, for example. Down in the lower right here, where there's this little globe, right now mine says 683, but if I hold that down, we've got iPhone 5. For instance, the iPhone 5 is 320 by 568. If I want this design to look different on an iPhone, I have to set up what are called breakpoints, and that occurs right up here in your Dreamweaver menu. So for example, on a desktop, I get this kind of look, but if I were to drag this down to a phone size, the header and other information might just be too small to even read. So if you look at any kind of website that has a mobile design created for them, you'll see that the design is quite a bit different, and it's just a matter of changing out the styling for that. So if I'm going to create something for the iPhone, I want to leave the tags alone, or the HTML here, but what I want to do is I want to work on some of the styling up here. So the way you work with this is the desktop right now uses all of these styles as the initial setup. But if I need a breakpoint at, let's say, 320 for the iPhone 5, which I got down here, 320, I would move this little bar here down to about 320, or really actually exactly 320. This is my iPhone layout. Now all I have to do is hit the plus sign here, and on the left it turns green. It says max width 320. I want to do it as part of the styling on this page. I don't need a new CSS file. The max width, so anything that goes over 320 is going to take on the current desktop settings for styling. Now if I hit OK, what you'll see is this line of code near the bottom of our CSS says @media. It's called an @media query, and it says max width 320 pixels. Inside these braces, we are going to change out the styling specifically for anything that's below 320. So for instance, right now if I'm looking at this design, I can see I've got my header, my navigation, and then these two elements are really cramped. And what I probably would want to do is have them stack on top of each other. The navigation that we've done in the past, the unordered list, this is a perfect example of using responsive design for unordered list, where that list could become stacked, not horizontal. But in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the styling for the side left and right so that they stack, right? Because obviously right now they're floating left, each one, and so they're kind of jumping up into position. So to make changes for this responsive design for 320, what you want to do is you want to select all the styling for a side left and right, copy that, and paste that into that breakpoint. So here's my new information right in here. Now nothing changes, but what we want to do is we want to say, if this is an iPhone, we don't want it to float left anymore on either of these. So I take out the float left, which is different than up here on the original desktop version. So down here in this breakpoint, I took out the floats, and then what you want to do is you want to change the pixel dimension to 100%. And then I'll do the same thing for the side right. I'm going to set that to 100%. And now what we're getting is more of a stacking look to this file. Actually, the width, I want the height not to be 100%. I want the width to be 100%, sorry. So 100% width here, and then the same thing here, 100% width. Now, you can see that the side left and the side right are now stacking correctly based off of this breakpoint that we created. So let's review that real quick. The styling here from this point is our original styling, which is for the desktop. If we want to change the design for an iPhone, we need to find out what the width is, the maximum width that we want to create, and it's called a breakpoint. And once it falls below 320, we want this to override what's above here. And so we'll copy the side left and side right, and then just remove or change our styling for that breakpoint, for that specific tag. So that's pretty much it. So when you're working on your project, you'll set everything up initially, in pixels. Then you'll start to work in percentages, so things kind of move. And then what you'll end up doing is once everything looks good, you'll go ahead and set up a breakpoint for the iPhone with a 320, just like I did here on this tutorial. And then you'll just copy a few things, most likely the unordered list and maybe an aside right and aside left. copy and paste that into this breakpoint and then change out some values here so that you can make some visual changes to the menu here on the left within Dreamweaver. So now if I go to the iPhone 5, it looks like that. And then if I eventually go back out to full size, now the left and right go side by side because that's what we told it to initially in the floats up here in the initial styling. So that's a liquid layout. We'll work with percentages, and then to add a breakpoint, you do it with the plus sign here, and you'll see that you'll get this green area, and then you will get the breakpoint here, and then you'll copy information into that from above and then make some changes to it. Thank you.